Good morning. You're listening to Central Wisconsin's 24-hour information station, AM 1320 WFHR. It's time now for the Morning Magazine, brought to you by Comfort Air Heating, Cooling, Plumbing.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Morning Magazine for this January 22nd, 2020. Your host, James J. Maloff here. In part two today, we have our friends from ODC coming in, and we will be talking with Stephanie Hartman and Sarah Schuler along with us in part two. Part one, though, we are joined by Doug Machon from Wood County Board. Good morning, Doug.
Good morning, James.
And we have our friends from Wisconsin Rapids Community Media as well. Good morning, guys. Appreciate you being in with us. Doug, it is good to see you.
Thanks, same here. Always good to be here.
I always appreciate the chances we get to talk, and apparently I'm not going to get as many of them as I thought.
Run downhill.
We'll get into that in a moment here. But first up, how have you been?
Good. Good. I'm much more relaxed, of course, since I've announced that I'm not going to be a candidate for re-election. Mm-hmm. So that's alleviated a lot of stress from my life. My wife will attest to that. But we're not skating out. We've got a lot of work to do yet. We've got some initiatives that are still on the burners, and we're gonna carry through. Like I said, we're not gonna skate out of here. We're gonna run hard to the finish. Yeah,
and we're gonna touch on that in a little bit here. But what I wanted to start off by doing is giving you an opportunity. Last Friday we did our Celebrating Carl show, where we remembered our partner Carl Hilke, and a longtime friend of yours. Way before we get into your relationship on air and all that stuff, you two good buddies, good friends off air and stuff.
Yeah,
and I wanted to give you a chance to.
I knew Carl for a long time. Actually, we were in high school at the same time. But and I didn't get a chance to call in last Friday, and I regret that. But I'm glad to see that there was a good turnout of some of his old compadres, so to speak. And Pam had mentioned some of the guys I called in that I knew as well: Greg Gack, Terry Stake, those guys, and those guys were also icons in the community, and together they formed a group of people that were important to our culture here in the south end of the county, in Wisconsin Rapids in particular. And I was hard pressed to think of one story that kind of I would want to relate about Carl, because there were so many. I think it was just a general thing for me. I think one of the things I appreciated most of him was his understanding of what was happening around him, and what our culture, what made our culture what it was in this part of the town. He had a very good perspective, having grown up and lived here his entire life, and he really understood what made Wisconsin Rapids in particular the community it was, and what its benefits and what its assets were. And I think I always appreciated those deep discussions that we had about that. And I think Carl really appreciated people and what people brought on the very, very basic level to everything around him, and I think that was one of his more stellar characteristics.
I feel there's Carl and I would talk about this from time to time when we got to see when an athlete was retiring, and we were like, man, I'm lucky. I feel lucky that I got to watch him play his whole career. I feel lucky I got to be a part of that. That I was alive in time when this person was around. I feel that way a lot when I think about Carl. I feel humbled and incredibly thankful that I had the time that I did with him, and not just as a person, a friend, and all those things, but just on a level of what we do with this format and his work at it, his legacy at it, and what he did with it.
He certainly leaves a great legacy, a very proud legacy. Had a big impact on the community. In many ways.
And I really appreciate what you said there too about it. You'd be hard pressed to come up with one story, because I was in the same boat. I had listeners off air, on air, asking me, well, what about you and stuff, and I got like 4 or 5 things that pop in my head at least right away, and I decided picking out one. It's a very difficult thing. But
I think what people don't realize, and Pam and I touched on this a little bit, is Carl had a great appreciation for music.
Yes,
a lot of people didn't realize that about him, but he goes back to the same genres as I do, as musically, and he didn't share that with a lot of people. But he had a very great affinity for classic rock and some of the older stuff. We were talking about Steely Dan and things like that, and I can remember Carl advocating for the Doobie Brothers back in high school at one time. So yeah,
it was actually one of the first things that him and I were able to bond on right away when we found out we're going to be doing the morning show together. We're two different cats, and we're two different generations, and all these different things. We wanted to find things that we could bond on because we got along. We were good friends. We weren't sure. Well, how are we going to make a show together? Yeah. One of the first things that we were able to connect on was music. Yeah. Well, I grew up with my dad's music, which was yours and Carl's music too and stuff. And to anybody that ever got to talk to him about music knows how intense he'd get about how into it he'd get. And it was fun. It was great. It was fun to talk with him about it. Yeah. And I think that's another one of those things that made him such a fun person to be around, that it wasn't just, if Carl, you're around him, he's going to talk about this one thing and just that. You could talk about anything with Carl, and he could talk about anything. Yeah. I appreciate you taking the moment, though, and sharing that with us.
Glad I was able to.
I want to get into this, and I want you to kind of let people know that may not have read the article as far as you not seeking another term.
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, I would like to take an opportunity here to say that I've been, since I've announced that I'm not going to run for re-election, I've been overwhelmed by the number of calls I've gotten from people that I worked with, people that I had ancillary type relationships in other organizations away from county government that we maybe had crossed paths or collaborated once or twice. But I've been overwhelmed with calls from those people, not only thanking me for my service, but telling me that they're going to miss me being on the county board. And I think that's incredibly touching for me. Yeah. It's very gratifying. It's very humbling, and in many ways, it's validating to me. And I think it really makes it easier for me to go out, because it tells me that we were doing the right things. We were doing the things that mattered. That when people call you and tell you that they're worried about some of those initiatives being followed through and things like that, that tells me a lot about what we were doing and it makes me very proud of what we were able to accomplish. There was a time. It's like I said in the interview with the newspaper. There's a time to step away. I felt that time was now. We've accomplished a great deal in the last 2 years. I think when you look back at some of the things that we did accomplish, and some of those were stressful. They were not easy things to accomplish, and anybody that's in politics will tell you it's a crappy business. And some of those things were stressful, and we didn't know whether we were going to get them done or not, but we ended up getting them done.
I could tell that you were in a good place with this when you came in, because you had more color in your hair. It's one of those gigs.
Did I have more hair?
Yeah, right. It's one of those gigs, politics, where if you're doing your job and you're good at it, it tends to age you. Not in any other way than it just does. One of the famous things you see is presidents when they're elected and after they're elected, that kind of thing. It seems to be one of those things, wherever you are in the political realm, it does have a taxing effect on you. It takes a toll. What makes this the right time for you to walk away?
Well, I think going forward, I realize you have to have support to be effective, and that support was waning for whatever reasons, and it was not going to be there. I did not see myself, and certainly my wife would agree, did not see myself entertaining any more stress because of it. I'll be 65 the 1st of April. I would like to have some time devoted to purely my selfish and stated retirement. I want to play some golf. I want to fish. I think I've done my fair share. So this is civic duty. I got a little bit of tight. We have a perfect model. I'll say this: we have a perfect model. I've always said county government's where it's at, and one of the reasons why county government's where it's at is because we have the perfect model of nonpartisan government. Mm-hmm. And you probably heard me complain and lament about how partisanship has destroyed any kind of pragmatic thought we have when it comes to governmental affairs in this state, in this county, or in this state, in this country. But I think that you see the ravages of partisanship entering a dynamic that's probably the purest form of representative democracy we have in the country, maybe on the planet, in county government. And that's very disturbing to me. And, I'm not going to sit here and call people out, but I can tell you this. If you want to know more, you can invite me back after I'm out of office, or you can buy the book.
Great line. And we will. We will definitely have you back out of office, because I want to follow up on that conversation. I do want to ask, too, though, as somebody who is involved in politics at any level, I like to ask this question, and especially since you bring it up. Do you feel that people shouldn't treat their political party like it's their favorite sports team? Our favorite sports team, we ride with them no matter what. They're our team. We lose a heartbreaker, and we're still going to love that team no matter what. We will always vote for that team. Doesn't it seem like when it comes to politics, there should be more depth to it than that. There should be more detail than just, I'm just going to rah for my team,
absolutely,
no matter what, even if I don't believe in what they're doing or what they're saying.
I will say this to that. Yeah, okay. Ideologues are dangerous people. And that's the dynamic that we have set up, I believe. And we're really getting into the philosophical side of politics here now, but I've said it before. I get rankled when people try to identify me as a D or an R.
I feel
because
the same
I'm not
way.
either, and I'll go to my grave on that one. I'll take a lie detector test. It destroys pragmatic thought. I still maintain that in a diametrically split legislator, whether it be in Washington D.C. or Madison, Wisconsin, when it's close enough that you could elect truly independent legislators, they would be the difference makers down there. Now, I can tell you this, I can go either way, because if it's pragmatic and it's logical, I can see the good. I don't care where it comes from.
Yeah.
But if it makes sense for my constituents and it makes sense for my county, I think I can recognize that on my own. I don't need to have a party boss or a majority leader tell me how to vote or how to think, because I think I pretty much got that covered at 64 years old. I've been around the block a few times.
Yeah.
I think I understand that. So nobody's going to tell me what makes sense or what doesn't make sense from an politically ideological view. And I don't play that game. I don't want to play that game. I don't think anybody should want to play that game. And I really believe it's up to the constituents and the voters to identify those people and elect the proper people. And that's part of the reason why people don't want to get involved. Some people don't want to get involved because they see it as a snake pit, and I can understand that. Analogy. But the fact is, it takes people that recognize those points to get involved to make a difference.
Very well said. I appreciate the transparency as always with you, Doug. I always that's one of those.
Probably catch hell for it. So.
I appreciate it, and I know our listeners do. When it comes to to make another metaphor to football here, I appreciate you putting up on me with that.
No, that's fine.
We're seeing in football a lot of players retiring early, or earlier than they used to and stuff. The Chris Borland is the most famous example, especially in this state, and that kind of thing. Similarly, and in a parallel way with politics, we're seeing a lot, and I'm hearing this at least from a national level. I don't know about locally, but a national level, a lot of younger people being kind of not care. It's not that they don't care. They're kind of like burnt out already. Like they're not even in their 20s and they're already burnt out from politics, and they're not looking into doing things like being a part of a board or something like that. Do you see like
Well, I can certainly identify with that, because myself, I think I've stated maybe last month, I still have some gas in the tank. I'll probably be looking for a way to have some kind of impact on my community one way or the other. But apparently, like I said, the stress gets to you. I'm encouraged by what we're going to have as I think a step in the right direction in diversity on our board. The young lady that's going to take my place is, number one, she's a female and she's from a younger demographic. Yeah. I think that's encouraging. We're also going to have a man from the Hmong community that's going to step onto the board. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah,
those are the kind of things that it's baby steps, but those are the kind of things you have to have if you're going to have a representative government. If you're going to have a representative body, and they have to be aware of their surroundings. You have to have some knowledge of how government runs. You certainly have to have some fiscal knowledge when it comes to the budget, and I think that's probably one of the areas where we could probably do better. But the fact is, we have staff that know their way around, and you have to not micromanage staff, and you have to let them do their job, and you have to hire the right people, and we do a fairly good job at that. We don't always hit home runs, but I think we do a pretty good job. We have a great HR director. We have some really good department heads that are doing the right thing.
You hit on an important topic there too, with the baby steps. That it may not be overnight, but it's great to have different voices, different opinions and angles on things from people coming from a different perspective. It makes any cabinet or any office stronger. We've seen that since Abraham Lincoln, going all the way back to him.
And that has to have value for the constituents and the voters. Yes. I mean, they have to recognize that as being a valuable part of their community and a valuable part of the representation of their community.
Speaking with Doug Machon, chairman of the Wood County Board, along with Wisconsin Rapids Community Media, and with us. And Doug, when you look at your career and how long you've been doing this, again, for those that don't know, I'm just assuming people know. How long have you been at this position?
This is my 8th year. Coming to the end of my 8th year, my 4th term. So, yeah, and I. Originally when I wanted to run, I think I stated this last month too. I was thinking in terms of term limits, but I realized that it takes a while to get perspective in government, how it runs, and so I'm not probably quite enthralled as I was about term limits. But there is a time and a place. I think you can't run government with people that are all retired and they're the only ones that can make the meetings. It's a commitment. I understand there's a commitment, but you have to have. I think you have to have a good cross section of demographics in your community if you're going to have true representation, and that's problematic sometimes.
When it comes to the next people coming in to like you mentioned, the young lady taking over your spot, people in other spots as this goes along, what kind of advice or what kind of a perspective would you give people coming into this?
Put your bulletproof vest on in the morning.
Yeah.
No, I would say
it's kind of funny because it's very similar to what I tell young actors: get Teflon, get some Teflon on as you're going into those casting sessions. I would say
keep your mouth shut and your ears open for a while. That's for sure. If you're bringing personal agenda, check it at the door. If you're bringing ego, check it at the door, and pay attention. And number one, pay attention to don't take everybody's word at face value. Do your fact checking, especially when it comes to budget stuff. It's pretty easy to get snowballed if you're not paying attention. I know that it can be overwhelming when you start looking at a budget. When you look at the county budget, it's two folders that are like this, and you start looking at it and holy cow. But you'll learn to look for particular things if you want to. I can remember when I first came on, I spent a lot of time with our then finance director, Mike Martin, who was a gracious man and accepted me into his office. And I actually dedicated, I think, almost a day one time when we sat down in his ante-room there and we went through budget, and he explained a lot of stuff, and there's a lot of difference between private sector accounting and government accounting, and I wanted to have some answers, and that was a day well spent because it really keyed me in on some things, and then I could do a lot of stuff on my own, and then I went back to Mike at the time with other questions, but I think that's critical because as we talk about policy, and I may have said this before, county board supervisors are policymakers. We are not managers. We are not department heads. We hire people to do that stuff. If you have a county board supervisor who's micromanaging, he's not doing his job. That's very evident to me because he's a policy guy, and his job is to sit in the committee meetings and on the county board floor and make policy that directs those department heads. If you're telling department heads what to do or trying to direct them or questioning anything they do, I think that's inappropriate. I don't think that should be done. And I think that the biggest part of policy is budget. I mean, that I've always said that. I've said that for a long time, that the biggest part of your job as a supervisor is fiscal policy, and that fiscal policy is the budget. And if you don't understand the budget, or if you don't want to understand the budget, I'd have to say, what are you doing?
Yeah, yeah.
You know?
What makes you say that it's the most important part of it?
Well, I think because we're number one, we're beholden to taxpayers.
Mm-hmm.
That's always been my number one premise, is that I'm here to represent my constituents' tax dollars. I'm not saying I'm here to increase them, decrease them, but I'm here to ensure that they are being spent wisely. Yeah. And if I'm not doing that, if I'm not investigating that to the fullest and asking the right questions, then I'm probably not doing my job.
As you wrap up this part of your this chapter, what are some things? I'm not going to ask you to grab the one thing that you're most proud of, but what are some things that you're really proud of that you've been able to help make accomplish in your position?
Wow, there's a couple of small things that we did that I'm just as proud of the big ones. I would have to say, first and foremost, anybody that knows me, is that getting the solar initiative off the ground and the Renewables and Sustainables Committee established was probably, if anybody remembers me for anything, I hope it's that, and that may be a long time coming before we develop that fully. I think the way we've approached economic development, the change there in the fundamental dynamics of how the county was going to approach economic development. I think for a long time, the seed. I'd like to give a shout out here, because the seed committee, which was the head of our economic development piece, as well as our water piece, which is another place where we've made great progress in water. And we were stagnant there. We were stagnant there with the leadership and seed for as long as I'd been on the county board. And I think that Ken Curry becoming the chairman of the seed committee has been invaluable to the county in many respects. I have the utmost respect for Ken Curry. Anybody that knows me knows that Ken's my guy. Always has been. We sat next to each other on the floor, talked a lot. We're good friends. Everywhere we go. Our wives get along. But Ken Curry is an honest, upright, thoughtful, tolerant man, and I have nothing but respect for him, and it's shown in the job that he's done for Wood County, and you can take that to the bank. He's certainly done more than I ever expected that he would do, but he's never been afraid to take on matters of controversy. He handles everything very well. In fact, I told him on Tuesday, he spoke on the county board floor at the end. We were having a discussion, a water presentation, and he stood and made some comments at the end of that. And it was the most eloquent that he's spoken on the county board since I've known him in 8 years. And I complimented him. I said, Ken, that was good stuff, and well done. And he tends to be self-deprecating at times, but he's a good man. A lot of respect for him.
Doug, as we're about to let you go here, is this the last time you'll be in with us?
No, I think I've got 2 more shows yet.
I thought so.
February,
so.
March. I'm not going to.
Okay.
I'm not going to.
We ain't getting rid of you that easy. No.
Yeah, no, you know me. I like to talk. I got a mouth. I use it.
and I'm looking forward to that. As somebody doing this job, I love people like that. So I'm really looking forward to having you in again.
Like Jeff Cannon when I interview him. Holy cow, you're easy, Doug.
It is always a great time talking with you for many reasons, and I appreciate you sharing as much as you have, and certainly the work that you've done for our community. So appreciate you, Doug. And
I really appreciate that, James. I mean, that's one of the things that's making this pretty easy for me going out, is at least I'll have some good memories. And again, thanks to all the people that have really sent me their thanks and appreciation. I can't tell you how much that means to me.
We'll talk again real soon, Doug.
Okay, you bet.
Thank you. Again, a big thank you to Doug Machon, chairman of the Wood County Board, and a big thank you to Wisconsin Rapids Community Media for always being with us. Stick around. In part 2, we will have our friends from the ODC right here on Morning Magazine, AM 1320 WFHR.